Hello friends, my name is Dr. Siddharth Jain and we are doing a series on cardiovascular system examination. This is the second video of cardiovascular system examination, and in this video I will be discussing about inspection and palpation. So in inspection, the first thing we have to see is shape of the chest. So normal shape of the chest is ellipsoid. So this is the normal shape of the chest, that is ellipsoid in shape. We have to see whether there is any deformities present like kyphoscoliosis or straight back syndrome, funnel chest. So these deformities can impact our examination, or certain deformities like pectus excavatum, it can give clues about certain diseases present. So we have to see about the chest wall before proceeding for cardiovascular system examination proper. Coming to the precordium. As already discussed, and we all know that precordium is the area of the chest wall that is overlying the heart. The area of the chest wall that is overlying the heart is known as precordium, and examination of precordium gives certain clues regarding disease present. Okay, so in precordium we have to see whether there is any bulge, any flattening or any retraction. Okay, so this is the sternum we are drawing, and precordium is this part of the chest wall which is overlying the heart, and this is the apex. So suppose this is the part of the precordium, there are certain ribs present in this area, and in between these ribs is the intercostal spaces. So if there is bulging only of the intercostal spaces and not the ribs, only intercostal spaces are bulged and not the ribs, that signifies pericardial effusion. If there is bulging of both the intercostal spaces as well as ribs, that means the disease has arisen before the fusion of bones, like in childhood or childhood heart disease or congenital heart diseases. Next, there can be any localized bulging. So if there is any localized bulging, like in ventricular aneurysm, post myocardial infarction, sometimes patients develop ventricular aneurysm, that is one of the complications of acute MI, and these ventricular aneurysms can be seen in the precordium as a localized bulge. So this is an example of localized bulge. Flattening or retraction, these can be seen if there is an old fibrotic pericardium. Either there is long standing fibrosis of pericardium which has made the precordium flat, or during systole, instead of coming out, instead of thrust, there is retraction. That signifies that there is long standing chronic pericarditis or fibrotic pericardium. Okay, now what happens in coarctation of aorta? That most commonly the coarctation occurs just distal to the left subclavian artery. So the coarctation happens just distal to the left subclavian artery. Okay, and if this is present, then you see the upper limbs will get full blood supply, whereas the lower limbs will get less of blood supply. So the patient will have well developed upper extremities and very thin lower extremities. So that signifies that patient has coarctation of aorta. Next is pectus excavatum. It looks as if there is in the chest wall there is some backhoe loader has done some excavation, like there is a excavation done, and that this signifies Marfan's syndrome. Next is shield chest. Shield chest. So we all know the epic Mahabharata, the tale of Mahabharata, and there's a very good character we know about Karna. So it is said that Karna was born with a shield. He was born with a shield, and he had some something in the ears also, that is shield, Kavach, also known as shield and Kundal. So the chest of the child appears as if there is some shield on the chest. Okay, so that happens in females. We can see in Turner syndrome, and in males we can see in Noonan-Ulrich syndrome. So both of these syndromes can be associated with congenital heart diseases, and Noonan-Ulrich syndrome is most commonly associated with pulmonary stenosis. So these are some of the chest wall deformities that we have discussed, and which can give us clue about the underlying disease. Next is apical impulse. In inspection we say that it has apical impulse, and during palpation we say this as apex beat or apical thrust. So coming to inspection of apical impulse, what is a normal apical impulse? Apical impulse is a very important topic. Giving your Viva Voce examination, there are many questions asked on apical impulse, so we will be discussing this in detail. Normal apical impulse is around 2.5 centimeter or 1 finger breadth. Its extent is 2.5 centimeter or 1 finger breadth. It is present in the left fifth intercostal space. Half a inch medial to mid clavicular line. So that is normal apical impulse. Also, see, if we draw a line between mid-sternal line and the apex, so the normal distance between mid-sternal line and apex will be 7 to 9 centimeters. So this is not a circumferential line. That will depend upon the chest wall, thickness of chest wall. This is a tangential line from the mid-sternal directly going to the apex. Okay. Next, coming to causes of absent apical impulse. In what all causes the apical impulse can be absent? So there are few extracardiac causes. Number one, if it is behind the rib, so it will not be seen. Remember, we have to examine apical impulse in supine position. But if we are unable to see apical impulse in supine position, we have to make the patient sit and a bit bend forward, and still if the apical impulse is absent, then only we have to mention as absent. Next, if the patient is very obese, okay, there may be breast tissue, or in cases of emphysema, we all know in emphysema the heart becomes tubular, so there is rotation of the heart and the apex may shift towards posteriorly, and that's how the apical impulse can be absent in these extracardiac causes. So what are the cardiac causes of absent apical impulse. The cardiac causes are pericardial effusion. If there is lot of fluid in the pericardium, so that will inhibit the transmission of pulses to the chest wall, so it can be absent. Next, if the patient has a very weak heart, like in post myocardial infarction, if the heart is very weak and is unable to give a strong thrust, then also the apical impulse can be absent. What is apical impulse? It is the uppermost and outermost thrust of the cardia which is seen on the chest wall. So that is the apical impulse. What all we have to see in apical impulse is position, location, extent, any displacement and mobility. So these all things we have to see in apical impulse. So this is the mnemonic: position, whether it is present or absent. So whether it is present or absent. So this we have already discussed. Next is location. So location we have already discussed. It is present in left fifth intercostal space, half inch medial to mid clavicular line. Extent. So extent we have already discussed. It is around 1 finger breadth or 2.5 centimeters in extent. Displacement, whether the apical impulse is displaced or not. So what can be the causes of displacement? So displacement can be in sideways direction. So this is the lung, these are the lungs, and this is the mediastinum, and we have, suppose this is the heart in this area, mediastinal area. So if there is very large pleural effusion, on the left side, then it will exert pressure on the heart and displace the apical impulse sideways towards the right side. Same thing with pneumothorax. If there is pneumothorax on the left side, then it will displace the apical impulse sideways towards the right side. Okay, so next is any musculoskeletal diseases like kyphoscoliosis. So if there is kyphoscoliosis, then that can also pull the heart, and that may also, so if the shape of the spine is like this, so it can pull the apex sideways towards right side, or vice versa. If there is scoliosis is towards left, then it can push the apical impulse towards left. A very large pleural effusion on right side can exert pressure and displace the apical impulse toward left side. So that is sidewards displacement. What are the causes of downward displacement? Downward displacement can be seen in aortic aneurysm or mediastinal growths. So in these conditions, the apex impulse can be shifted downwards. Okay. What are the causes of upward displacement? Upward displacement in massive ascites, advanced pregnancy, or very large intra-abdominal tumor. So these can cause upward displacement of apical impulse. What can cause increase in extent? So if the patient has very thin chest wall, then we can see that this thrust or apical impulse can be seen in the more area, then it is normal, but in thin chest wall we can see increase in extent. Also in hyperkinetic states, high fever, post exercise, so in all these hyperkinetic states we can see increase in extent of apical impulse. In severe AR or MR, so these are also examples of hyperdynamic circulations. In these conditions also we can see increase in extent of apical impulse. Coming to mobility. So the normal apical impulse, it shifts its position with shifting of position of patient. Like if the patient changes position from supine to left lateral position, then the apical impulse will also be shifted more outwards. So if there is lack of mobility, then this signifies fibrotic pericardium or adherent pericardium. Now coming to double apical impulse. So in patients with acute MI, sometimes we can see two apical impulse which are separated by few centimeters. So in patients with acute MI, sometimes we can see two apical impulse separated by few centimeters. So that is known as double apical impulse. Next is double systolic thrust. So in patients, that is classical of patients with HOCM. So double systolic thrust of apex is seen classically in patients with HOCM. Next is negative apical impulse. So as I had already told you, negative apical impulse means apical impulse during systole, instead of going out, it goes inwards. So that is seen in adherent pericardium, that is fibrotic pericardium. Because of chronic, there is fibrosis in pericardium, the pericardium becomes adherent, and that can cause a negative apical impulse. So this is also known as Skoda's sign or Broadbent sign. Skoda's sign or Broadbent sign. Now coming to parasternal pulsations. Though the parasternal pulsation in the left upper side, these parasternal pulsations can be because of dilated left atrium, and in left lower side we can see parasternal pulsations because of dilated right ventricle. Okay. And if the left ventricular pulsations sometimes we can see in right parasternal area, and these pulsations, if these pulsations will appear, then epigastric pulsations will disappear. The epigastric pulsations will disappear, and sometimes we can see left ventricular pulsations in the right parasternal area. Now coming to other pulsations of chest wall. In right sided aortic arch, this is the clavicle. In right sided aortic arch, we can see pulsations over right sternoclavicular joint. So these signify right sided aortic arch. In right second intercostal space, if we see pulsations, then it can be because of aneurysm of arch of aorta, or if there is aneurysm of descending aorta, we can see sternal pulsations. So aneurysm of descending aorta. This is aneurysm of arch of aorta, and this is pulsations over right sternoclavicular joint. This is seen in right sided aortic arch. Okay, so these are some of the other pulsations. We can see pulsations anywhere in the chest wall in patients with vascular tumors. Those vascular tumors can cause pulsations anywhere in the chest wall. Now coming to suprasternal pulsations. Suprasternal pulsations. So suprasternal pulsations or episternal pulsations we can see in hyperdynamic circulations. In patient, when there is hyperdynamic circulation, we can see these pulsations. Also in anemia, severe anemia, we can see patients will have suprasternal pulsations. In certain anomalous arteries like innominate artery, where there also we can see suprasternal pulsations. Coming to carotid pulsations. In patients with chronic severe aortic regurgitation, there will be very prominent carotid pulsations, as if the carotids are dancing, So these dancing carotids signifies that there is chronic severe AR, and this is also known as Corrigan's sign. We will be discussing all the signs of aortic regurgitation when we take up the valvular heart diseases. So in that I will give a mnemonic also and discuss all the peripheral signs of AR. Right now we are seeing the carotid pulsations, the dancing carotid, that is known as Corrigan sign. And sometimes when this become very severe, AR becomes very severe, it appears as both the ears are also having pulsations, and sometimes it appears that there is knobbing of the head with each cardiac systole. So this is known as De-Musset sign. Okay, now coming to epigastric pulsations. Here is the aorta roughly, okay, and this is the heart, and this side is the liver. So suppose we keep our thumb over this area, and if you feel a pulsation over this part of the thumb, that is the pad of the thumb, then this is aortic pulsations. If you feel a pulsation on this part of the thumb, this is right ventricle, so these are right ventricular pulsations. And if you feel a pulsation in this part of the thumb, that means this pulsation is coming from enlarged liver. So this is how you can know, just by placing your thumb, you can know from where these epigastric pulsations are coming. The hepatic pulsations can be seen in tricuspid regurgitation or tricuspid stenosis or enlarged liver. In AR also we can see sometimes hepatic pulsations. Massive left-sided pleural effusion. So if there is massive left-sided pleural effusion, that can also displace the heart towards right side, and that can also give rise to feeling of pulsations on this part of the thumb. So this finishes our inspection. Now coming to palpation. So first thing in palpation is apex beat or apical thrust. What is a apex beat? So apex beat is the most lateral palpable cardiac impulse which exerts perpendicular thrust to the palpating finger. So it is the most lateral cardiac impulse which exerts perpendicular thrust to the palpating finger. So that is the apex beat, also known as apical thrust. What is the normal apex beat? So normal apex beat, if we take distance from mid-sternal line to mid-axillary line. So it will not cross half of this. It will not cross half of this line. So that is the location or extent of normal apex beat. It will be situated in one intercostal space. And the thrust will be felt only in early systole. So these are the three features of normal apex beat. Now coming to abnormal apex beats. Also normally it is palpable in left fifth intercostal space. Okay. Now coming to abnormal apical impulses, apex beat. So first is the heaving apex beat. There is a slow and sustained rise and then fall in heaving apical impulse. So this is seen in patients who have systolic overload. Systolic overload. So what is a systolic load? Systolic load is the load or pressure against which the heart has to contract. So that is the pressure in the aorta. Pressure in the aorta. So if there is high pressure in the aorta, then the heart has to contract against an increased pressure, increased resistance, and heart has to work more. So slowly what will happen in the heart? So this is, suppose this is the normal left ventricular wall. Now because it has to do increased work, remember, like for example, if you see, if we go to gym, what happens if we go to gym? If we do increased work, the muscles will increase, the bulk of the muscles will increase. This is what happens in systolic overload. The bulk of muscles keeps on increasing. It keeps on increasing, and there becomes so much of wall thickness that inside the heart the space for blood becomes very less. So there will be more of muscle mass, and that increased muscle mass will give a heaving apical beat. So this is seen in systolic overload, like left ventricular hypertrophy, in long standing hypertension, and in patients with aortic stenosis. In patients with aortic stenosis, because of the stenosis, the left ventricular has to contract against an increased resistance. Next comes the hyperdynamic apex beat. So this happens in diastolic overload. So what is the diastolic overload? Diastolic overload is the load which the heart carries while pumping. So amount of blood the heart carries while pumping, so that is the diastolic load. So what happens in chronic AR or MR? The heart becomes dilated, or in patients with dilated cardiomyopathies, the heart will become dilated to accommodate the increased blood which has come back from the aortic regurgitation or mitral regurgitation. So there will be increased blood pooling, and this will cause the heart to dilate. So this will cause a hyperdynamic apex beat. So I will explain this systolic load and diastolic load with an example. Suppose a person has to walk. This is the normal path, and the person has to walk in this normal path. Okay, so this person can walk in this normal path for say 10 kilometers. 10 kilometers. Now if we give a load of say 10 kgs, if we keep a load of 10 kgs on the head of this person and then ask him to walk, so this is the diastolic load. The person is carrying this load to do the work. So now he will not be able to walk for 10 kilometers. He will be able to walk for around say 5 kilometers. So this is the diastolic load. And if we ask this person to walk uphill, so this is the systolic load against the resistance which he has to walk. Now again he will not be able to walk 10 kilometers, he will be able to walk say 5 kilometers. So that is the diastolic load, and this is the systolic load against which the person has to work. So in hyperdynamic apex beat, the apex beat will be displaced down and out. It will be displaced laterally as well as down. So it will be displaced down and out in patients with hyperdynamic circulation. Hyperdynamic circulation like MR, like AR. Okay, the apex beat may be felt in more than one fingers. So this is again abnormal. Now coming to double apex beat. Double apex beat, where we can feel two pulsations during one systole, and that is classical of HOCM. Now coming to tapping. So this is seen in mitral stenosis. Suppose this is the left atrium, this is the mitral valve, and this is the left ventricle. So this was the normal valve. Okay, now the mitral valve has become stenosed. So what will happen then? There will be less amount of blood in left ventricle. There will be decreased filling in left ventricle. The left ventricle is normal, but because of mitral stenosis, there will be decreased filling of left ventricle. Because of this decreased filling, there will be an early systole. And there will be less amount of blood which is going into the aorta, and so the thrust will also be less. Because of less thrust and less amount of filling, the apex will not be, it will just touch and go. touch and go. So what happens in tapping apical impulse? It will just touch and go, touch and go. It will not lift the finger. In normal apex beat, the thrust will lift your finger. But in mitral stenosis, because of decreased filling and early systole, it will not lift the finger. It will just touch and go. It will just tap and go. That is known as tapping apex beat, seen classically in patients with mitral stenosis. This tapping apex beat, it is also known as this is the palpable S1. The palpable first heart sound, that is the apex beat. Now coming to heaves. The heaves are felt with this part of the palm, this part of the palm. Okay. We feel the heaves with this part of the palm. So this is the sternum and this is the xiphisternum. In left upper chest, left second intercostal space, if we feel a heave, that is because of left atrium, dilated left atrium, which can be seen in patients with mitral stenosis, aortic regurgitation. Okay, so in these cases, mitral regurgitation or many other causes, we can see a dilated left atrium that can give a heave in left upper part of the chest wall in ASD. Next is left third and fourth intercostal space. This was the left second and left third and fourth intercostal space. If we feel a heave, then it is because of right ventricle, increased right ventricular pressures. So that can be seen in pulmonary hypertension, pulmonary stenosis. So that will give a heave in the left third and fourth intercostal space in the parasternal area. Pulsatile liver, it can be seen in patients with tricuspid stenosis, tricuspid regurgitation and some aortic regurgitation. So how do you feel for pulsatile liver? There is a bimanual palpation. Patient has to be lying down and you should be on the right side of the patient. Your left hand is on the behind the chest, on the loin, and your right hand should be on the right upper quadrant of the patient, and then you have to do bimanual palpation to feel for the palpating liver. Okay, other method is you can feel for the palpating method by keeping your hands between the right and left lobe, and by this method you can feel for the palpating liver, but this will painful and cumbersome for the patient who is already having a enlarged liver. That the liver will be very, very tender. So best is to do bimanual palpation like this. Okay, next is thrills. These are the vibratory sensations which are produced in the heart, and they are felt as vibratory sensations. They are basically the palpable murmurs. Okay, so these are best felt in patients who are having stenotic lesions more than regurgitant lesions. Okay, what happens, why they are produced? So suppose there is a stenosis of this valve, Because of this stenosis, the resistance increases, and when the blood passes through this, there are eddies current which are produced. So these eddies current, they give rise to these vibratory sensations, and that is like a palpable murmur. Okay. Thrills are associated with low frequency murmurs. Low frequency murmurs which are harsh, so the thrills are associated with these murmurs. Also they are associated with more with systolic murmurs than with diastolic murmurs, and more with stenotic lesions than regurgitant lesions. Okay, there can be several positions depending upon the lesions also, like in aortic stenosis the thrill is felt in the systole in the aortic area, but you will feel with more accuracy if the patient is sitting and bending forward position. Okay, if the patient is sitting and bending forward position. Also the thrills are felt with this part of the hand, the distal part of the hand. So the thrills are felt with this part of the hand. So in aortic stenosis it will be felt in sitting up and bending forward position, and in mitral stenosis it will be felt best in the left lateral decubitus positions. How do you differentiate between a thrill and if it is a hyperdynamic state? So there will be definite sense of vibration. You will feel a definite sense of vibration for moderate duration. In hyperdynamic circulation the duration will be less, and in thrills it will be more, and it will be associated with a murmur. Very rarely in very low pitched murmurs there can be thrills present and absence of auscultatory murmur, but mostly it is associated with murmurs. Now coming to location of thrill. Location of thrills. So this is the aortic area, and here we will feel the thrill of aortic stenosis and aortic regurgitation. In aortic stenosis the thrill will be felt in systole, and in aortic regurgitation the thrill will be felt in diastole. So clinically if you see, just after you feel a pulse, if you will feel a thrill just after a pulse, that is a systolic thrill, and in aortic area it is associated with aortic stenosis. And just before a pulse, if you feel a thrill, that is in aortic regurgitation, that is a diastolic thrill you will feel in the aortic area. Okay, aortic stenosis thrills can also be felt in the carotids. Pulmonary stenosis thrill you can feel in the pulmonary area. Mitral stenosis and mitral regurgitation thrill you can feel in the apex. Mitral regurgitation you will know it will be in diastole, and mitral stenosis will be in systole. Okay. In ventricular septal defect you can feel a thrill, systolic thrill in left lower peristernal area in ventricular septal defect. Okay, So this is the location of different thrills. A continuous thrill can be seen in patients with patent ductus arteriosus. Now coming to the last topic of palpation of today's video, that is the palpable friction rub. Palpable friction rub in patients with pericarditis, because of the friction of the two layers of pericardium, we can feel these friction rub in mid precordial area. So that is the palpable friction rub. So what is the mid precordial area? Between the mid sternal line and the mid clavicular line. In between these two, in the center of these two, is the mid precordial area, and in this area we can feel the friction rub. Also it is best felt in mid precordial area. Now coming to palpable hard sounds. I'll be discussing, when we'll be discussing hard sounds in auscultation, I'll be discussing palpable hard sounds in auscultation video. Thank you. That's all for today.